Good evening, everyone. I hope that you're doing well this evening. I hope that you're feeling mentally well, and hopefully everybody is healthy on the call. Tonight for the MS Views and News Mental Wellness Chat, we are going to be talking about building better mental health. And so I wanted to take a moment just to thank MS Views and News for bringing this program to us, because without their they are the ones that came up with the idea of having this program, and they have helped to find support for this program. And so they have been bringing this to the MS community during COVID when we needed it the most. So thank you, MS Views and News, and we're going to talk about building better mental health today. So before we get started, I always like to introduce myself in the case that you don't know me, but my name is Jessica Thomas, and I am a licensed clinical social worker. I specialize in working with people that are living with multiple sclerosis and other neurological conditions. So I am a mental health counselor, but I really specialize on the emotional wellness piece of physical illness. And I know that probably many of you on the call know that MS has, a lot of symptoms, and we experience the physical symptoms, but often we have emotional symptoms that go along with it. But just a reminder that this program is being video recorded, and you'll be able to find it in about, I would say, probably a week on the MS Views and News channel that's on YouTube. And so if I say something and you want to go back and reference it, or you were taking notes and you felt like you couldn't take them fast enough, know that this is going to be recorded and available, or if you want to share it with someone else. And then the other thing I'd like to share is that this is not a counseling session. So we are going to use the chat box, and we're going to use that to talk a little bit, but this is not an actual counseling session. And so I will respond as best as I can to things in general. So we will move on to the next slide. And we're going to start with using the chat box. We're going to get comfortable with it. So if you can go to your chat box, and I would like for you to tell me where are you from, how you're doing this evening, and are you new to the mental wellness chat? I know that we have had a lot of people from all over the United States on the mental wellness chat, and we've had a lot of people that have consistently been on every month. And so I would love to hear a little bit about who is on the call tonight or on this webinar tonight. And I will get us started. So my name is Jessica Thomas. I am from North Carolina, and I have been leading the mental wellness chat since it began. And I love, love, love this program. And I am doing pretty good tonight. I'm going to go to the question box and see if that's where some of our things. Okay, yeah, our things are coming up in the question. So yeah, definitely use the question box instead of the chat box. So we've got James is from California, and he's doing okay. We have, and it's his first, so welcome, James. We have Tammy from Tennessee. She is not new. Tammy, I remember you. I'm so glad you're here. Tina from Illinois, she's doing well tonight. Joyce from Chicago, she's not new. Hi, Joyce, it's so glad to have you back. Monique is from Long Island, doing well tonight. Maddie is from Greensboro, he's happy, and he has had 2 good days in a row, so that is awesome. And then Wanda from Colorado, this is her first event, and she's doing okay. We have a lot of first-time people, which is great. We have Terry from Seattle, and there's been on other ones. Thank you for being here. Davida from North Shores. Rhonda from Alabama. Great day, beautiful weather. It has been beautiful in North Carolina too. Nora's been feeling better than yesterday. She's from Augusta. Lisa from Indiana, she's doing okay, and she is new. And then we have Sonia from Columbia, South Carolina, well but mentally drained, and it's her first. Sonia, thank you for being here. I know what it's like, and I know we all know what it's like to be mentally drained. Jill is here from Florida. Hi, Jill. It's so good to see you. And then Davida is from Massachusetts, and Dee is from Fairhope, Alabama. So we have a lot of people on the call today, and we have a lot of people that are brand new. So I did want to mention that if you put anything in the question box for me, and you don't want me to read it, make sure that you say don't read, or you can omit from writing in it, just because I use the chat/question box to help connect people to one another. And then we have Melissa from Florida here as well. Okay, so we're going to move on to our next slide. And we're going to talk a little bit about the how mental health affects us. And it's important because we're going to talk a little bit about building better mental health. And in order to do that, we need to talk about like the way that mental health really impacts us. So your mental health impacts how you see the world, how you experience the world, how you feel in it, how you think about things, how you respond. I have had patients that I've worked with depression, and sometimes we'll talk about how sometimes with depression it is hard to see the world, you know, in the same way because they're looking at it through a lens with depression or a lens of anxiety. So strong mental health, it's not really just about the absence of mental health problems. Being mentally and emotionally healthy is so much more than being free of depression or anxiety or other psychological issues. What we want to do, mental health really is referring to the presence of positive characteristics. And so we're going to talk a little bit about some of those. And we'll stay on this slide. We're going to go back to the other slide real quick. So people that are mentally healthy have a sense of contentment in their life, a zest for living, and the ability to laugh and have fun. And that's a hard thing to say right now because COVID, and it's been a couple years, and it's been a really tricky time. So mentally, you know, if you can think about mental health, we've all been pretty impacted because of COVID. The ability to deal with stress and bounce back from adversity, and then the sense of meaning and purpose in both your activities and your relationships, and the flexibility to adapt to change, and to have a sense of good self-esteem. So that's kind of a general list of things that when people that are mentally healthy, what they have. So we're going to move to the different slide, the next slide, sorry. So today we're going to talk about building better mental health. I'm so sorry, I'm getting like tongue twisted today. And I want us to think about it in a couple different ways. We're going to think about it in a way that will help you to identify some of your abilities and strengths. We're going to talk about ways to cope with normal stresses of life and with MS. We're going to talk about how to manage setting boundaries, because boundary setting is something that is incredibly important. And it comes up often in therapy, but it comes up often even in these mental wellness chats. I have people that talk about boundaries. And then we're going to talk a little bit about coping with transition. So we have a lot on today's agenda, and we're going to get started. So there is often an emotional response to the physical symptoms that we experience. And so I want you to think about, and you can put something in the question box if you want, but do you have a MS symptom that you experience that you tend to notice that there is a response that you have to it? Like, for example, when I have a cognitive symptom, I can tend to feel kind of frustrated. That's my emotional response. Or when I have fatigue, if I have fatigue that is kind of extended for a longer period of time, I tend to feel a little bit guilty because then I feel like I'm missing out on something, or I'm not able to be as productive as I want to be. So I want you to go to the question box if you can, and just share if any of you have ever had a MS symptom that kind of connected to an emotional response. And we're a little bit delayed here on this, so I'll keep going on the next slide. We'll see if it catches up. So we have Lisa here says, when I can't remember something, I feel like a failure and cry. So that's a really strong response. Lisa, and that can be something that's very difficult when you have cognitive issues and you can't remember something, and kind of what you tell yourself and what your emotional response is to it, and it can be very frustrating. And I am for sure there are other people on this webinar that feel the same way. When we have Joyce that shared when she can get angry or frustrated with bladder issues. Tammy gets angry with cognitive issues when cognitive issues become apparent, and so you can tell. And then Terry says, "I'd rather be alone than say struggling with my mobility issues." And so there's you can see that there's a lot of just a lot of emotional responses related to the symptoms that we feel. So now we're going to take a really weird turn here, and we're gonna talk about signature strengths. And so I am going to ask you, and I think this is going to come up in one other spot too, when I talk a little bit more in depth about strengths. But I want to ask you, what is one of the things that you are really good at? Let's pause and talk about strengths. So, and this is an important thing, and I'll kind of talk a little bit more in depth about it, because as a clinician, as a social worker, one of the things that I do is that I help to identify what things are considered strengths for the clients that I'm working with. And the reason why I want to do that is because I want to build from their strengths. And building from your strengths is really important because, one, we all have signature strengths, things that we're good at. And with that, we can build from that. And so, so really having your strengths identified is important. So we have Tammy here, that she can talk to anyone about anything. That is a really good strength. And we all have strengths. I want you to go to the chat box, question box. Lisa says, I'm good at painting artwork and it helps me relax. That is awesome. And let's see, we've got Terry's good at being pleasant to strangers and people and at work and with selected friends. Maddie says he's going to make a record and music is his MS free zone. So that is a great strength. And let's see, we got Linda has perseverance. Sonia has compassion. She's compassionate. She's good at baking and cooking. Dee is positive and good at helping others. I love this. When I'm working with people and I'm helping them to identify their strengths, this is really important. And James is good at reading people. I try to really focus on strengths with people and to really disconnect it being about a job or a vocation. I want them to think, I want people to think broader. It can be about skills. It might be like writing or doing art, the ability to do things under certain contexts, like being able to handle stress or have good resources. It also can be character traits like compassionate and perseverance, etc., or abilities. So your strengths can be really a variety of different things. If you are struggling, or Davida has here, remaining extremely calm when waiting on hold for a live person on the phone. Oh my goodness, Davida, like that's like maybe the best strength that I've heard in a while. I love it. And that takes a lot of patience. So if you are having trouble with identifying one of your strengths or thinking about your strengths, often when people are struggling with mental health challenges or they're not able to identify strengths, I'm going to give you a couple of tips of what you can do. One is to talk to your friends, and really ask your friends, kind of what things do you think I'm good at? look at a list. Like you can see on this next slide up here, there's just a list I pulled off on the internet. And you could look at the list and really just circle the things that, that you identify with that you're doing. You can, kind of get concrete. Look back at your calendar over the past couple weeks. What did you find? What was energizing to you? What did you find yourself doing more of? And I'm going to add real quick, Renee on here is a great problem solver, and she's patient with others when she's helping. It's important to know your strengths. And the reason why is that we'll be able to build from them. So if you were able to identify your strengths, I want you to remember them today. And if you weren't, I want you to think about like this list that you're looking at, and to remind yourself that that you are good at things. You just have to identify what they are. And if you can't do them on your own, you can have friends or family help you as well to identify them. So we're going to move on to the next slide. And actually, what I would like for us to do, we're going to stay right there on that slide, but I'm going to talk a little bit about the relationship between resilience and mental health. I got kind of mixed up in my slides about strength. So having solid mental health doesn't mean that you never go through bad things or experience emotional problems, because the truth is that everybody goes through difficult times, and we all experience challenges. We go through loss, we have change, etc. And while these are a part of like a normal part of life, they can cause sadness, anxiety, stress. And just because physically healthy people are better able to bounce back from injury or illness, people with strong mental health are better to be able to bounce back from adversity, trauma, or stress. And this is called resilience. And many people with MS, I would say all of us, are very resilient because we have had to learn how to become resilient. And our disease possibly helps us to be a little bit more resilient. And for the people that are on here for the first time, I just realized I did not share. I have MS too. And so I am a licensed clinical social worker, and I live with MS. I've had MS for over 16 years. And so people that are resilient, they remain focused, flexible, productive, and in bad times as well as good times. Their resilience also makes them less afraid of new experiences and uncertain future. But I do believe that a lot of people that have been very resilient, even during COVID and these past couple of years, have had a lot of challenges. And even if you're a resilient person and you have MS, and MS can be can be unpredictable, that resilient people still live with a level of uncertainty, even with MS. And even if they don't know immediately how to solve a problem or how it will be resolved, resilient people are usually hopeful that a solution will soon be found. So there's really a connection between resilience and mental health, and I just wanted to connect that. I talk about resilience so much in these mental wellness chats, and I just wanted to make that connection. So we're going to go to some practical tips or practical and positive mental health building blocks. So these are going to be some of the standard things that you see, possibly when you're attending a wellness program, etc. And you're going to see that these are really good for MS, and these are really good for mental health. And so the first thing is working on your sleep schedule. How many people, I want you to go to the question box, how many people on here are good sleepers, that you sleep anywhere from 6 to 9 hours of rest at night uninterrupted? I'm going to say most of the time I'm a pretty good sleeper, and this is not an area that I'm challenged. Rhonda sleeps well, Tina sleeps well, Rhonda sleeps well, Tina sleeps well, but Wanda does have trouble sleeping. Sleeping and issues with sleeping is very common, and having issues with sleep goes hand in hand with mental wellness. Because if we're not able to sleep, we are not able to reset, and often we are more emotionally liable. We're a little bit more moody if we don't have good sleep. And honestly, our MS symptoms can definitely be what I would consider louder if we don't get enough rest. I know for me, my cognitive challenges will come up if I'm not well rested. My mood is not as good if I'm not well rested, and my fatigue by far is at its worst when I'm not well rested. We have, so a couple people, like Tammy tries her best, but she doesn't get a good sleep. Lisa can sleep anywhere between 3 to 6 hours, and that's a common, thing for some people. And then Maddie has some nightmares, so maybe not as good a sleep as he would want. So you can see that sleep issues are very common, but working on your sleep schedule can be an important thing to do. There is a type of therapy. It's called cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, and it's CBTI. And that might be something to look into if you are not sleeping well or if you're having trouble sleeping. What I would also recommend too is talking to your primary care doctor or talking to your neurologist about it, because sleep and MS symptoms tend to go hand in hand. Linda mentioned she uses a CPAP, and that helps a lot. So yeah, if you have sleep apnea and you are able to use the right tools, that can really help with your sleep schedule as well. So we're going to move on to the next slide. So that's one of the building blocks, is working on your sleep schedule. The next one is maintaining a healthy diet. And with maintaining a healthy diet, it's kind of known that a healthy mind resides in a healthy body. And eating well is good for your physical body, but it is actually good for your mind as well. The importance of the intake of the right vitamins and minerals, like B12, for example, if you had a lack or a deficiency, might result in mood swings. So if you're feeling any mood challenges, if you feel anxious or depressed, or just because of having MS, try to eat a balanced diet. I know for myself, one of the things I like to say is when I eat junk, I feel like junk. And that's usually pretty true. I have a lot of baseline fatigue. And so my fatigue is a lot worse if I'm not eating well. But if I'm eating better, then my fatigue is much better. And then also the recommendation I have on here is to cut the intake of caffeine. And I say that, but I do intake caffeine myself. But if you're feeling anxious or you notice that that's impacting your sleep, it is really, really important to limit the amount of caffeine that you're taking, because it can irritate you in terms of mental health, in terms of anxiety, and it can definitely impact sleep. So we'll go on to our next. Do not hesitate to seek therapy. A healthy mind resides in a healthy body. And that's important. And a part of a healthy body is the emotional piece as well. And so one of the most, I think, vital things is to discuss mental health with your healthcare providers. If you're suffering from a lot of stress, let your doctor know or reach out to a therapist. Some people really fight mental stress and they're not comfortable sharing emotions. But I can assure you that discussing your emotions and discussing some of the challenges and stressors that you have going on can really help you learn ways to cope with it. And that will help to build better mental health for you. Now, I want to ask, I'm going to do another question box here, because I think this one's an important one. How many of you on here have seen a therapist in the past couple years? And was it helpful? I'll ask you that as well. Tammy said yes, she has seen a therapist, and yes. Terry says no. I always like to ask this because it's interesting to see who's seen a therapist or not. Monique says no. Joyce says that she did see a therapist, but didn't think it was helpful. Thank you for being honest. Dee says, how do I find a good one? I will answer that in 1 second. Maddie said yes, and it's been very helpful. Davita said yes, I couldn't see a difference. So there's been a little bit of variety here. So how do you find a good therapist? I on these mental wellness chats, I've talked a little bit about this question. There's a couple of things. There's not a lot of therapists that specialize in multiple sclerosis, but there are a lot of therapists that specialize in chronic disease. And so I usually say that if you start a search looking for a therapist that specializes in chronic disease or has just a lot of chronic illness experience, then that connection alone is going to get you closer to probably some themes that you might want to work on. And so also the National MS Society has a mental health listing. You could contact them, and their information and referral center possibly could connect you to a mental health therapist in your area. And okay, so we have some other people that have been to a therapist. Linda says she has, or hasn't in the past few years, but she has in the past. Davita said it's very expensive. There are counseling options that are free to no cost or sliding scale. So if you're having trouble paying for mental health therapy, I greatly encourage you to either contact your I would say your mental health department, that might be, or let's see, your mental health department, or United Way 211 would be where I would recommend to. And then we have some other people have had therapy. It was somewhat helpful. We'll have to keep searching when I can afford it. Again, if there's affordability is an issue, I highly recommend to reach out to your United Way 211 and find some resources, because there are a lot of free or sliding scale resources for mental health. And I know this for a fact for my area and other areas. And then Lisa gets to see one at her neurologist's office, which is really cool, and sees them every couple of weeks. And then Dion said Psychology Today, and Psychology Today is actually a really good resource to find a therapist too. You can definitely go and select a therapist and what kind of specialty. You'll see a lot of chronic disease. If you look that way, you can see if they accept your insurance, etc. So thank you for all the feedback on that. So do not hesitate to seek therapy. So that's a building block of mental wellness. We're going to move on to our next slide. Do what makes you happy. This is so important for mental wellness. Keep doing activities that you love. Making time for your favorite activities. What makes you happy? I'm going to ask you. You can write this in the question box if you want. But what makes you happy, and do you make time for it? I know there are a lot of different activities. I know we have some people that play music. We've had some people that do art. But are you doing what makes you happy? What you enjoy? I work full time, and so sometimes I kind of say I like to really engage in things that that make me feel creative, and I make time for that. But it's a little bit harder sometimes. So Dion says she likes to bake, and she likes to participate in leisure reading. And I hope you make time for that. That's so important, to make time for the things that you like to do. And then Linda likes being productive. So she likes to read when she can focus, and she likes to knit when listening to seminars. That's a really good thing to do. And so, and then Rhonda likes to play with her grandchildren, and then have weekly visits with close friends. But doing what makes you happy is a building block for mental wellness. Now, the next thing we're going to talk about is activity and exercise. Working out and performing activities boost the happiness chemicals in your brain. And these chemicals can help to reduce anxiety, reduce depression. It can help some with fatigue. I am not going to give you any specific recommendations on what type of exercise you should do or how you should do it. You should talk with your doctor. But there's also a lot of really good exercise resources. There's some even on MS Views and News. They offer a Pilates class. I believe there's a yoga class, and there's even a physical therapist that leads some of the exercise classes. And so right now there are virtual exercise programs that are available, and then there, of course, are in person as well. But exercise is a building block for mental wellness. And exercise, I know, looks totally different from person to person, and especially when MS is involved. So I encourage you to explore what activity and exercise may mean. I know one thing that I consider is exercise looks different for me from season to season, depending on the heat in North Carolina, depending on my energy level. And so sometimes I consider just being more active as good enough. And then sometimes I consider some of the exercise that I do as good enough. So I hope that that given your MS and your situation, that you can talk with your doctor if you're not exercising already, maybe see a physical therapist and find a way for you to be able to have modifications in your exercise as well. So we're going to move on to our next slide. Again, we're on the building blocks of mental wellness. And this one is connect with each other and help each other. So this is, actually, I'm going to, before I go to this one, I'm so sorry. We have some people that wrote down some really great things. Lisa says she loves MS yoga and painting because it reminds her of poor painting, because it reminds her of her MS, because it doesn't always work out as planned. That is so great. Linda said Dr. Gretchen, Mandy, Trevor at the MS gym. So those are some resources for exercise. And then Terry said Silver and Fit used to be in Silver sneakers. And those are great exercise resources. So thank you, everyone, for sharing. So another building block of mental wellness is being connected. And again, we're connecting here tonight. There's a reason I have you input things, because I want you to hear what each other are saying. It's important that we know we're not alone, and that we are social beings, even if we are introverted, even if we don't like to always be around people. And connecting with people and not being alone is important. So, and if you're at a place where you're able to help other people and reach out and connect with other people, I encourage you to do so. Because when we are connected, those things give us happiness and also a sense of mental peace. So we're going to talk a little bit about boundary setting, because this comes up all the time in therapy. And often. And it also comes up in the mental wellness chats, like I had mentioned earlier, that often boundaries are something that we struggle with, or that maybe others struggle with in terms of receiving or understanding boundaries or understanding limitations. And so in definition, boundaries are really the separation that we need to feel mentally, emotionally, and physically safe or respected. And boundaries really can help us to feel that we're in control of ourselves. When boundaries are not valued, we can feel uncomfortable. And boundaries means learning how and when to say no. So a couple of things that I have reached, or that I have kind of learned with some of the people that I work with, is that sometimes people with MS, we tend to have limited energy. If you have a lot of energy, I'm so happy for you. But we tend to have a little bit more limited energy. And this is confusing to others, I think, sometimes because they don't understand, because some of our disease might be invisible, some of it is visible, but some is invisible. And often other people in your life, I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about people I work with. Often people in your life will want you to do things. So say, for example, and this has happened many times, I work with someone who maybe is not working anymore. They've medically retired because of their MS. And so it looks like on a day-to-day basis that they have a lot of time, a lot of free time. So they may be asked by a family member to watch a child, or they might be asked by a family member to go run errands for them. They may be asked to do things in the community by their church, etc. And this can be a really hard thing because people don't see some of the invisible parts of MS. And so I tend to see this theme often where the person with MS kind of struggles because they're asked to do a lot and or over asked, and they don't know how to say no. And so for me, I think boundary setting is finding a way for people with MS to protect their time, their energy, and how they want to spend it. And I want to acknowledge this is easier said than done sometimes. So signs that it is time to set a boundary. If you have found yourself chronically feeling taken advantage of, maybe in certain situations, maybe that you say yes, and we can move to the next slide. Maybe you find yourself saying yes to please others at your own expense. You're feeling like you're not getting your needs met, but you're kind of fearful to say no because you don't want to upset someone, or so you just to make it easier, you say no. Or you say yes. Your fear of being rejected or abandoned. So if you say if you say no, what if they don't invite me to the next thing that they're doing? If I can't help out this time, doing whatever you want to get your needs met. So in this example, it's time to set a boundary. If other people are kind of doing whatever they want, not what you want, to get their needs met, and they're not really honoring kind of like the limitations or what you can or can't do. And if you find yourself kind of engaging in people-pleasing behaviors in order to be liked or to get approval or just to be invited, etc. And so these are pretty good signs that it's time to set a boundary. And it's not an all-inclusive list, but these are kind of things that come up in counseling. And how I usually know that it's time to set a boundary is that when people are saying yes, deep down they want to say no, or they say yes and they realize that it's hurting them physically or mentally, emotionally, or people say yes, but then deep down they feel resentful. Usually those are times in counseling that we are talking about boundaries. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to set boundaries. So setting boundaries, it means being honest and transparent. Now, I can assure you that when you set boundaries, it's tough, especially if you've been in a situation where boundaries have not really been set very well. And when you first start to set boundaries in a friendship, in a situation where there have not been boundaries before, it's kind of hard to do. But it's also very encouraging and very cool to see that once you do start setting boundaries, people adjust. So setting boundaries, it means being honest and transparent. It also includes letting others know what those boundaries are and not expecting for people to have a crystal ball or to just know what you want or don't want to do. I want you to consider setting boundaries as an act of authenticity and love. because a lack of boundaries can lead to frustration, burnout, stress, and mental health challenges. So with setting our emotional boundaries, so there's I think physical boundaries, about like activities that you're doing, et cetera, but then there's also emotional boundaries. And this is important for our mental well-being. And I want you to know that you can be a very nice person and have boundaries. Our emotional boundaries are really important because they give us the personal space, the emotional, the mental, the physical, and otherwise that we need in any given situation. Boundaries can be healing. Boundaries can help us to not feel taken advantage of. Now, most of us were never really trained in how to set boundaries and how to foster healthy relationships with boundaries. And I think it's important to know that within setting boundaries is there's really a energy exchange between people and activities. And I think that we're very aware of this with MS usually, is that there is an energy exchange. So when you're doing something, you can either gain energy from it or energy gets taken away from you. And so setting boundaries is really an essential part of keeping your bucket full, so you can use your energy towards what matters the most to you. But this requires kind of pretty careful management. And setting emotional boundaries is really important to our mental well-being because it allows us to feel safe and comfortable. And having a lack of boundaries really does come up a lot in therapy because it affects our mental well-being. And when our emotional boundaries are respected, we often feel valued, honored, and respected, safe. And I want you to consider that boundaries are healing, because they help us to not feel taken advantage of. Boundaries are really the foundation of healthy relationships with ourselves and others. Now, I want to ask you, we'll keep it on this slide real quick. How many of you, or who on today's webinar has set a boundary recently that you're proud of? And it's working well. So Tammy says that she has. Joy said the hard part is that I want to do the things asked. And that's a really tough balance. Joyce is even setting those boundaries for your MS, right? Being able to find the things that matter the most that you want to do and help with, but then at the same time, if you can't, kind of, being fair to yourself and your health. I know for one thing for myself, I set a boundary with my work schedule. For a while, I was working a lot later in the evenings because of the demand with COVID, and I realized I had to set a boundary with that. And that boundary I had to set with myself to make sure that I wasn't working late, but then I also had to set that boundary with our administrative team as well. Rhonda said that she has set a boundary and she is feeling great relief from it. That is great. And we'll keep letting these the feedback come in, and I'll move on to the next slide. Patricia said that there are she's had several boundaries. They are not really recent, but have learned to say no, which is what exactly we're going to be talking about in a second. And then Terry said not donating money and saying no. And then Sonia said yes, place boundaries on work also. And Rhonda said, if I do not set the boundary, I am so overwhelmed. I agree, Rhonda. And then Melissa says, canceling plans when fatigue is bad. And that's a boundary too, is saying, I know I signed up to do this, or I wanted to do this, but I can't because I don't feel well. So we're going to talk a little bit about practice and master saying no. Again, I'm going to reiterate, while it can be a challenge, people will adjust to the boundaries that you set. So here are just a couple of tips. So one is prepare a phrase. So you could say something like, I think it's going to be a no for me. Thank you for asking, but I can't. I hope you can find someone that can help with that. Practice saying no. I know one thing that I do is I create a pause because my time and my energy is very valuable to myself. And I know my schedule and my routines. So I will usually say, well, let me think about it, but I'll have to get back with you. Let me look at my schedule. Know your limits. That pause sometimes can be really helpful because many of us are automatic yes people. And so you tend to want to say yes right away. So I've learned if I create a pause, I don't say yes right away. And then also to value your needs. It's okay to say no. No can be a complete sentence. And even if you have not said no in the past, no is okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about coping with life changes and transitions. I'm going to take a drink real quick. My throat is getting dry. So we're gonna talk a little bit about coping with life changes and transitions. And this is, again, boundaries and having good boundaries is a part of building really a better mental health. And then coping with changes, things that are happening in life. And so this helps to build better mental health as well. So when we're faced with changes, it's important to know that change is unavoidable and often out of our control. And I know that we had MS, so we sort of know that a little bit already. And then over the past couple years, there's been a lot of changes, so we know this. But I think acceptance of some of these things being out of our control is helpful. Learning to manage the stress. Because coping, when we have life changes, transitions, either with our environment, our health, our work, our family, our community, etc., it creates stress. And one thing that we know is that stress and MS don't go hand in hand. So we have to find a way to manage our stress. In a couple months, I'm going to do another mental wellness chat, and I'm going to talk about managing stress specifically, because I think that there are a lot of tools that would be really helpful for us to learn. But also planning for change. Sometimes when we can embrace some of the change or be proactive with some aspects of the change, that can help. Remembering your values, the things that are important to you, what matters most. And keeping that at the core of any decisions as you're walking through some of these changes and transitions. And then building your resilience muscles. So in a lot of the other MS mental wellness chats that I've done, I talk a lot about resilience and building tools to help you to be more resilient. And so thinking about and kind of exploring what things can help me to be resilient during challenging times. And then focusing on you and taking care of you. The things that might be happening in your environment might be out of your control. It might be things that are bigger than you, or things that you just can't change. But one thing that you can do is to do things that are allow you to be as healthy as possible during these changes, during these transitions. And then the other thing is asking for help. If you're going through a difficult time, going through changes, again, with your health or your environment, etc., or you have just any difficulty, asking for help. I, again, encourage therapy, but I am a therapist, so I'm a little bit biased here, and I help people all day during my full-time job with coping with challenges that they have. But you might be able to ask for help with a friend or a peer, etc. But to know that you can ask for help and that will help you. So this here is really a list of things that you can do to help when you're dealing with a change. I think also thinking about pivoting, pacing. We talked about that a couple months ago. And mindset changes can really help too. Learning, how to pivot, how to, if you're going in this direction and life is taking us in this direction, how to do that in a way that causes the least amount of stress as possible. And that takes a lot of psychological resilience to do that. And then pacing, learning how to pace yourself, and with the mindset changes, allowing yourself to say, is there any other way that I can look at this situation? It's really hard or it's really difficult, but what is it one other way that I could look at it? Or can I see something positive from this? And sometimes we can't see something positive because it's just a really hard situation. And that's okay. So we're going to move on to the next slide real quick. Actually, I'm so sorry. Can we go back one more time? I'm so sorry, I forgot. So I wanted also you to recognize that your transitions, they really hold a special place in your life. And so you can, another thing is to view stress not as a threat, but as a challenge. That's like a different mindset way to look at it. You can look at and think about what are the benefits of change, and allow yourself to grieve some of the losses, and then also focus on the positive aspects. And then when we can realize that change is just inherent to life, that can help us with the acceptance. And then also turning to our support network. So we can move on to the next slide. I'm so sorry. So it's your story. When you're dealing or coping with a difficult challenge or a difficult period of time, I want you to remember that you're the author of your story. There's some things that you will not have control over, but there are some things that you do as well. And you may just be writing a very difficult chapter in your story. And I hope that's empowering to know, is that you're the author. So you have some control, some power, some aspects to navigate and build better mental health as you're going through your challenges. I think it can be very empowering to know that it's your story and you get to write it, even though some things you don't have control over. I have my story and I still have things I don't have control over, but I know that I do have control over some aspects. So I would like for everyone to go to the question box. And I would like for everyone to share one thing that they will take from today's program. One thing that they will do to build better mental health. We have, and I'm going to read this one here. Linda chooses not to answer her phone unless she knows the caller. I think that probably is a good mental health tip right there, because with so many spam calls, it's very stressful when your phone's ringing. No is a complete sentence. Rhonda said that. Maddie said boundaries are good and nice. Wanda said setting boundaries. Lisa said setting boundaries, wait before I answer. Dion says working on setting and maintaining boundaries. So we definitely have had a lot of people that are have learned from or have gravitated towards the boundary conversation tonight. And Patricia says, although I may not control some things, I can control my attitude. That is so true. Terry says, call United Way 211. Thank you for remembering that. And then Tammy said, I have to figure out how to accept change is going to happen. That is so tough, right? That we have to accept that change is a part of life. So there are a lot of things that you guys have taken from tonight's program, and which means I've and then Renee says, sleep schedule, stop drinking close to bedtime. So there's some tips that she's going to work on for getting a better sleep schedule going on. I'll look and see if there's anything else coming in. Does not look like it. So what we're going to do is we're going to move on to our next slide real quick, and we're going to talk about our next mental wellness chat. So our next mental wellness chat is not going to be in March. It's going to be in April. So we're going to take a break for March, but we're going to come back in April. And we're going to, the program I'm going to do is Let's Talk About It. We're going to talk about MS, relationships, and communication. So often it comes up in therapy as well as in the mental wellness chat. I don't know how to talk to somebody about symptoms that I'm experiencing. So we're going to focus a little bit on couples, but we're not going to focus solely on couples as well. We're going to actually talk about other relationships in your life, like friendship, coworkers, etc. So we're going to work on communication and tools to help you in your relationships, and how you can communicate with your friends and your loved ones. And so, and by being able to do that, it really can foster and help with mental wellness, because if we have areas that we struggle with communication, or our loved ones don't understand us, then what happens is that it's kind of sad and it's hard, and it puts a little bit of a strain on our relationships. So this is for couples, this is for singles as well. If you have a significant other, if you have a friend that you want for them to be on the call, and please encourage them to participate. But it will be on April, and I look forward to this program with you guys. And then I'm going to go back to the question box real quick. Patricia says she's going to work on stop reading within a reasonable time at night. So it sounds like she stays up late reading, so she wants to go to bed a little bit earlier and work on that. So it sounds like through tonight's program that we have come up with a lot of really good strategies to think about, and that I want you to know that there are lots of opportunities to build better mental health, and there's a lot of resources out there as well. I mentioned some, but you can do a lot more research and continue to build and expand from the things that we talked about this evening. And so I want to applaud you for being on the call, and do not hang up quite yet. I wanted to thank MS Views and News for, again, bringing this program to us this evening. It's a great opportunity for us to connect and to know that we are not alone. And so if you get an opportunity, just thank MS Views and News for bringing this program to us. And then I always like to say, so immediately following tonight's program, there is going to be a survey, so don't hang up quite yet. And if you know me well, what you will know is that I always say, it's not goodbye. We're going to put a bookmark here, and I will see you at the next MS Wellness Chat. And so it's not a goodbye, it's a see you later. I wish you a beautiful evening, and I wish you well as you find small ways to build better mental health. And I'll see you later. Bye.